Dum 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 dum. Welcome to another episode of The Hobby. Today we are going to do something that even for me is quite unexpected because I had planned to deep dive into the new AMP version using Pirate Borg, but I have not gotten through the new iteration just yet. Also, small spoiler, AMP is now called MAP, but I'll get into that in the next video. And I thought, well, I have some spare time free to just fill in something that I have ready on the table that I've played a little bit and that I am eager to actually show off an idea that I think might be of interest to you hobbyists out there. And that is how to turn a indie hex crawler and pen and paper game, so to speak, into something that's more of a table presence that can get you more immersed with maybe some components that you have lying around. Not that there's anything wrong with indie hex crawlers. In fact, the only thing wrong with this is that I printed it out wrong. The cover, at least. When I sent this to the printer in Lulu, I accidentally made the cover like this instead of the other way around. Rookie mistake, I know, but rest assured the rest of the booklet came out just fine. Also, if you're a fan of reading manga, then this will not perturb you at all. Anyway, you see that my table is actually quite messy right now and that I'm not at my usual table. That is because I'm playing Lands of Evershade over there, and I am having such a great time that I have not cleared off the table in pretty much 2 weeks' time. And so now I'm at my painting table. You see some other things standing here that I'm working on right now. Some of the AN Trespass, Odyssey, Mythic Battles, Pantheon, props that I'm going to use for that. There's a little bit of talking about overland journeying, Sleeping Gods, Distant Skies, miniatures that I'm painting over there just to play with my buddy. There's some Land of Evershade stuff here. Anyway, not very interesting, not very relevant for this session. This session, we're going to look at 3 things, and here they are. Now, the first point that we're going to look at is the game itself. Alone Against the Zone is from the makers of 4 Against Darkness, and the Alone Against the... Now my mind is blanking for a second here. Against the Night, or Against the Horror, or Against the Vampires, was the one that was more horror-based that came before this. And it was made by Alexei Asperin and Andrea Sfiligoy. And although those other games were not really my cup of tea, they were excellent games. This one particularly spoke to me because of how it was set up. The printing job aside, that kind of mutated, which is, I guess, the theme appropriate. This book you can just get as a PDF, which I did, and then I printed it out. But you can also get an actual physical copy of it. And it may not come with a ring band, but that's okay. I did it actually this way because I wanted the ring band, and I wanted to lay it flat on the table as I go through it and play it. Now, what is Alone Against the Zone? It is a solo pen and paper survival game in a haunted exclusion zone. It is lightly based on Stalker, or the novel that came before it, and it is unabashed in that set in that theme. And so if you're not really hot for post-apocalyptic, supernatural kind of themes, then this may not be your cup of tea. I recommend then looking at the previous games that were more in the fantasy or the standard horror genre. But this spoke to me not because of the theme, actually, ironically, but because of the way it is set up. The way that it is set up, and I won't go through all the rules. Many other channels have done this. There's a lot of exposure since this game came out, so there's nothing new under the sun. I hope to add to that conversation, so I won't rehash the rules necessarily, but I will quickly just briefly explain what the main structure is, because that is what spoke to me. And it's right here. It's that gameplay framework of having just 3 steps that you cycle through over and over again. Move, explore, scavenge, move, explore, scavenge. You go through this and it is so intuitive. That spoke to me from a design perspective right off the bat. You first, before you go through that cycle, you of course create your operative. You get skills that go along with it, or you choose an operative that's in there. And then the core mechanics really are like this amount of pages. That's it. It is a very elegantly designed game. You basically, after you created your character, you roll in the echoes in the zone to determine what your main mission is going to be, your echo that you're trying to find. And after you've done all 6 echoes, you go into the sort of the end game. Then you start exploring the zone, and you do that by taking out a map that you can just print off right here. I've printed out my map on a piece of paper, yellowed paper that was a little bit burnt. I discovered that actually the yellowed paper that I have is not only just single-sided yellow paper, which is kind of odd, but it had an imprint on there for Hannah. So I just, I don't know where this paper came from, but I thought that was kind of funny considering the theme of the game. So anyway, this is the character that is perhaps the daughter of the main character, and for Hannah, I am exploring the zone. But you explore the zone, which is in hex grid, and then you resolve encounters by fighting or sneaking or just fleeing away from them, which is a very simple dice game with 2 d6. These are my thematic d6 that I use for post-apocalyptic or Weird West games, which are very nice. But it's a very simple system where you just roll 2 d6 to basically do anything. You fight enemies, mostly mutants or other creatures that have been mutated by the zone. And then there's a variety of things that happen on the side. There's some side missions that you can do. There's some narrative that you can read. I can show it to you a little bit. This I also thought was kind of neat, that you have all the pages after the setup divided into the exploration, location, and characters, the encounters, items, and events. And when you go through them, you can just very easily find them like a bookmark. The encounters you can find here. There's a variety of encounters depending on which zone you're in. There's a whole bunch of items that you can gather. And I love that there's images for every single item in the book. That is, I think, so neat. It's so visual. It's so direct. The artist, really, my hat off to you, because that's really well done. And then you have events that are listed here, also with various pieces of artwork, and they're all unique. And I thought that is so cool. It is truly following the tenets of storytelling, where you have characters, events, and locations, and that's the whole game. In fact, if you looked at the core mechanics and you looked at this little diagram, move is location. You go from one hex to another. You draw it out depending on what you find. You can draw out these things there that you find in those hexes, and you get like a map eventually. Explore is basically the event that you are encountering, or it can be the characters that you meet, the NPCs or the enemies that you have to fight. And scavenge are basically the loot, the reward that you get, the things that boost you in such a way that you are able to then go back and move into the next hex and have enough energy, enough equipment, enough gear to survive for the next round. I thought that was so cool, and it really speaks to story tiles, the concepts that we love here on the channel, because it really is just that. It's just characters, events, and locations, but every echo is separate in itself. You can play it 6 times, and then the 7th time for that main mission. You can explore in different regions, and then every region has its own little section of what you can encounter there. So for instance, well, let's roll 2d6. Say that we're in 9, we're in military installations table, which ironically I've seen a lot of times come by on the playthroughs on the Lone Adventurer, and I think Grouch Couch also had a playthrough. This seemed to be rolled a lot, ironically, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, so you would just jump then to page 56. I love that the numbers are very large on the pages of what happens there. 2, it's an active military base, which I've also seen, strangely enough. Boy, I'm rolling exactly what the other content creators have been rolling. But an active military base, you get a little bit of narrative, and then you get some gameplay instructions of what you can do there. I thought that is really cool. I would play this game in a heartbeat. I even made my own character, Mr. Archibald, who's always the eternal explorer on my channel. I made this just on a piece of red paper. I folded it up a little bit to look like an artifact that's inside the game. The same with, of course, the map. you know, just to make it look a little bit more like, okay, this belongs in this game. When I put it on the table and I'm drawing it out, then I feel like I'm in the zone. Now, that is Alone Against the Zone. The second part is where we look at how we can up the table presence of this game. Because the game is fine in itself. The fact that you could just take this book with you and 2d6, you know, and go on a vacation or go on a plane ride and whip this out and start playing is great. It really speaks to the pragmatism that goes into a design like this, because this is just as much fun as any role-playing game or board game, in my opinion. But I would not be the immersive person that I am if I did not scavenge around my game room and find components that I can use to supplant certain things within the game. Now, this being a hex game where you explore from hex to hex, I thought, instead of drawing it out, would it be cool to just have hexes from some other game, say Tapestry in this case, and take one off a stack of hexes and you start exploring. You take some characters, for instance, these are characters from Pandemic Legacy, I believe. There's also zombies. That is a little bit of a spoiler, but yes, there are zombies in Pandemic Legacy. But this would be your character, and they start here, and maybe you could see there's a base there. Maybe that's their home base. Great. Now I have a home base there. That's where I start. Now you just play out an event or an encounter as you would normally in the book. And then the next time you move, you want to go, for instance, here. Okay, so just like in Tapestry, you would say like, okay, I can only connect the terrain that matches it. So for instance, I could not connect any of these other terrains because they don't match the previous terrains, but only the water can be connected. Now, okay, so I just, I take a boat, I create some narrative that takes me from one side of this body of water to another, and now I'm there. And now there happens to be another green spot, but maybe that's like, a healing post or something, or it's, an enemy camp, for instance. These tokens I also got from various other games. I think some of them are from Pandemic Legacy, some are from Tapestry, some are from Discover Lands Unknown, and some are from Unsettled. And these are just all plastic tokens that are very neat to sort of have. You could also say like, okay, if I get, for instance, lost, I can use this hex, which I believe is also from Discover Lands Unknown. And you roll, 2d6 to see which direction I go in. So 11, I go in that direction. So now I'm going over here. And oh, like I see a mushroom there. So maybe there's food there or something. Might be nice. You could put these elements, for each one of these elements, you could have like a specific meaning. Like there's medicine there, or it's a radioactive zone, or there's just danger, there's an encounter. You could even put them on there after you've encountered someone there. So say that I had some zombies here that I fought against. Well, then and I fled. So now this is a danger zone. So I want to remind myself that if I go back there, I still have to fight those zombies. But you could get like medicine. You can get like maybe something that bridges time for a little bit. Biochemical zone, sort of. There's some other things. This could also be food, or it could be like a sack of supplies. This could be like an NPC that helps you out, a fellow traveler. A star could just be something that, is really memorable that happened there. Here you've gotten lost, for instance. You can come up with all sorts of things that occur in those hexes. But you could also just say like, I don't care for any of these things. Besides, I don't have these tokens. I am just going to like explore to my heart's content. And this is a nice little diorama to have on my table as I continue exploring, because let's face it, if you have something on your table that's nice and colorful that you don't have to draw yourself, and you can bring these hex tiles with you to some space on vacation or something, wherever you go. And you don't have to like abide by the rules necessarily of what terrain flattens your character. What terrain actually just matches the other terrain. Okay, so what else? I also have other tokens. I have tokens from other post-apocalyptic games, I have, for instance, clues. There's something like clues in this game that you can gather. Well, you can use these clues maybe closer towards an echo by, by putting them on the echo field and just being like, okay, I got a number of clues there, and when I have enough clues, then I'll be able to solve that echo or find it or whatever. And there's other tokens here. There's ammunition. There are tires, which could be vehicle. There's also medicine here again. There's money or booklets, potions or chemical things that can happen. There's a shopping cart for some reason. Forgot which game that is from. If you know which game these tokens are from, leave a comment below. I'd be curious myself. I would be literally on fire. You can also like have a radioactive zone. I don't know. It's all possible, right? Or these could be like reminders that you need to find some stuff. You could need to go shopping for another character in order to get like something from them, or you have to like evade some kind of, biochemical zone or something. That could also be a nice reminder. So you know that, somewhere there's a biochemical zone and you need to move there eventually. There's also dice. We could also have a number of dice that we employ in this game. Also maybe for storytelling, also maybe because 2d6 are fine as a system for itself, but what if you just wanted to move even faster through a game like this and you really didn't care if your survival rates go down that way, but you could just use like these dice from, I think, Monster Slaughter, and just roll them and say like, well, okay, I punched someone and they missed me in return. Okay, let's roll again. And oh, now they scratched me and I missed them in return. So that, cost me a life or whatever. Just a very simple method of employing these kind of iconography dice in a very different setting, if you have those dice handy anyway. There's some other dice, I think from Vengeance they are. You could also play these. These I'm not exactly sure. That might also be from that survival game. But here you gain a clue, or someone comes up to you and stabs you twice. Or it is some person who is hiding from you. Stealthy. You can roll these dice in conjunction with the enemies maybe in there, where you just say like, okay, that character has besides a melee weapon, also has like a range weapon that they can fire with, or they are super fast and they win your initiative. You could come out maybe healing your wounds or something before you go into a fight, like quickly patching them up, or knocking someone so hard that they see stars. I mean, I'm coming up with it on the fly. Obviously these are kind of, weird results that you might have. More pictograms you can find on the tapestry die, for instance. And there are other games that have these story dice in them. There is Forest of Radgost. You can use the dice from Descent, Journeys in the Dark. They also have pictograms on them. There's many dice that have pictograms on them. You can use Rory's story cubes, for instance, as well, and just roll them besides a side event and say like, okay, someone is pretending to be someone else than they truly are. And so you can roll this die, and you can see like, for instance, I don't know where I'm going. I'm getting lost. So now you roll this die, or you follow this chart, and you say, okay, north, and I'm going there because I don't know where else to go. You can roll this die from Tapestry to see what you find. Okay, there's something mysterious on the hex next to you. What can it be? Okay, let's roll again. Okay, it's some kind of NPC who you meet there, maybe a friend who helps you along or something like that. Nice things to sort of enhance your experience, just play a little bit with it, and yeah, just generally have a little bit more fun. Now, talking about more fun, part 3, in this very short episode, I want to reskin Alone Against the Zone. I love Alone Against the Zone mostly for the gameplay system, a little bit less so for the theme. I'm not a big fan of this sort of paramilitary, supernatural themed background. It's one of the reasons why I didn't back Stalker, for instance, from Awakened Realms, even though I'm a big Awakened Realms fan. The theme doesn't just do it for me, not enough at least. But I always see these kind of games as good playing grounds to flex my design muscles. And so I thought, what if, and I've been thinking about this for a while, there's a lot of games out there that have combat as the primary mechanism of conflict and tension and theme almost, where it's just about killing as many other people as possible. And sure, we're getting better at it in the terms of there's more variety. There's a little bit of narrative, there's a little bit of story building in there, there's a little bit of character development in it. But when it comes down to it, you very rarely talk to other characters, or you very rarely go into a zone expecting to just gather ingredients to build things or to craft things together that might help you or even the environment. The more that I thought about this, the more that I thought, well, I wrote a book, a young adult novel, many years ago that's called The Life Tree Discovery. And The Life Tree Discovery, The Elemental Journey, because it was supposed to be a series of 5 books. I only got as far as writing 1 book, but this is a self-contained story. The Life Tree Discovery is all about this kid and his sister who discovered that mythology and fantasy and fairy tales and all those stories are real, of course. You know, that's the bare basics of essentially every young adult novel back in, you know, the early 2000s. But more so, they're all connected to nature. And I found the environmental factor very interesting because I found a lot of things that we can do with regards to the environment that could be considered magical, really, when you think about it. And so the whole magic system is based on nature and our relationship to it. And there's a very dualistic aspect to the story where it's all about energy on one hand and matter on the other hand. And so I thought, okay, I wrote the book and it taps into those themes of energy and matter and how they interact with each other, with nature and sort of science and humanity versus supernatural, all these dualisms that we have in both reality and real life, as well as in our fiction. And so I kickstarted a game that was called Elemental Xenophobia that tied into the Life Tree experience. And this was an eco-fantasy conflict resolution RPG and a roll and write for 1 to 5 players. And I wanted to do the combination of roll and write and RPG because I thought, okay, it's cute to have a roll and write, but often it lacks the role-playing behind it. And I like role-playing games, but you often can't do them solo. Mind you, this is early times when there weren't so many solo games around. And so I kickstarted this. It was successful enough to fund, but it wasn't like a huge success by any stretch of the imagination. You can find copies of these. I'll put links in below on itch.io. I think I put them up, and you can get this book on Amazon if you're really interested. If you are, you have my eternal thanks, but I bring this up because I'm still fascinated by the thematic concepts of it. Because what did I do in this game? In this game, I had 5 outings that you did, and you just roll through this book and you play as you learn. So you learn new concepts, you learn concepts to do a role-playing a game with your friends. But then if you wanted to just do something by yourself in a solo fashion, you could do the roll and write at the bottom. And so everything at the bottom is a solo game. Everything at the top is for your group, for an RPG. But everything at the top is something that you could use as an immersive aspect to play the game in the bottom. And you can see that I used pentagons instead of hexes as a way to travel around the world. And they were very simple scenarios, mind you. They were very elementary, no pun intended, because they were just meant to teach you at first how to play the game. And then eventually you could like make these maps yourself. There was also, talking about maps, there's also something called a mind map. And the mind map idea, and that's why I bring this up, was a concept of actually making a system that is not physical combat bound, but based on dialogue and on a sort of intellectual conversation with other NPCs. And I needed some kind of system to sort of tactically represent that. And so I came up with this mind map grid where you would have little characters. I also provided, by the way, a character sheet, by the way, for the role-playing game, but I'll put that aside. Oh, the inner compass is called. So I provided like little standees that you could cut out and then fold in such a shape that they just became like a triangle. And you would place them on there, and you would place your own character there. And the idea was to just cross the grid to come as close to the NPC as possible, and then you would reach an agreement, essentially. That was just something that a friend of mine on Discord and myself, we kind of like hashed it out. He helped me with the Kickstarter by doing the voices for the characters, the intro of the Kickstarter. Once again, thanks for that. And it was just generally just a nice kind of experience of exploring a different way of encounter resolution than just physical combat. You would get like stats with where they would begin on the mind map, and they would continue that way. Of course, the 5 elements, because it was nature bound, so you had wood, earth, metal, water, and fire. All characters would come from one of those 5, and depending on if those elements react well with each other or not, you would be more hostile or more friendly towards each other. And then there was a whole part where you also, you would flip this over, and depending on which scenario you would be in, so in Outing 3, you would open up a piece of the map. And this map is where you would essentially find yourself in this magical realm called Fableinsel. And so as you went from Outing 3 to Outing 4, you would open Flap 4, and you would open Flap 5A, and then Flap 5B. And that's how you would move around the realm on the map itself. So all these nifty little things that we put in there. We put a little random table generation in there because random tables are always fun. And you could see that the maps became a little bit more expansive. You could do a little bit more. You would have to mark progress. So I think I was, even before Ironsworn, working with sort of progress meters. But these things are all intuitive to kind of game design anyway. And so this booklet was a lot of fun to make. It was a lot of fun to sort of make up. You can see here that I dabbled a little bit also with, Hexcrawl, but in this case, Pentacrawl, I guess. Depending on which realm you would be in a woody landscape, you would have, of course, forests, and then earth, it would be more desert, etc., etc. This was just a very fun experiment, but I thought, you know what, just for the sake of my own entertainment as a designer, how about I take a brilliant system that is, in this case, Alone Against the Zone, and I turn it into elemental. I take the most interesting parts of here, and the most interesting parts are very rudimentary parts that I already have explored here as well. But then I just kind of play with that elegant distilled system, because this is not elegant nor distilled, so it needs a lot of refinement. And these guys are experts at what they do. They've brought out a number of games, and I figured, well, just for my own entertainment, let's see if I can turn this into elemental. And that's essentially what I'm going to do. Anyway, that is today's episode of The Hobby. I hope you found it a little bit worthwhile of watching. A little impromptu session here. Get Alone Against the Zone. I think it's a really kick-butt system that really kicks your butt, but it is also just a really nifty system. Forget all of these components. I assume that most people do not have like a spare grab bag of all these tidbits to actually make out their own table experience. And when it comes down to elemental, I have several other projects that I'm also working on in my own spare time. So we'll see when we get around to this. But in the meantime, enjoy your echo finding, and always remember to keep exploring. Dum, 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 dum.